after you've made a catch with the snare setup, the remake is pretty important. You're going to notice that everything's going to tend to be quite a mess. The snares maybe all bent out of shape and out of order. Your pole, sometimes will be intact, sometimes will be off. This baited pole set, a lot of times if there's other beaver moving through, if the beaver you caught hasn't already chewed it, they'll break the pole off and try to take it with them. So I always bring an extra couple of poles with me for remakes. So this is a pole I hauled in today. You're going to pull your stuff off. Depending how you make the set, you're going to have a certain hardware that you can reuse. These are my hanger wire. These are just the pieces of wire that I use to hang the snares. This setup I actually had 4 snares on this, and I had 6 on that one. So this is, I've got, of the 4 snares, I kind of looked at them. The one that you make a catch in, almost every time is going to be destroyed. The cable's just all bent out of shape. So you just take this home with you. You can reuse your ferrules. If you got aluminum ferrules that you use on your snares, the lock is still good. You reuse the lock, cut the cable, throw it away, and remake a snare with new cable. And then I got this 11 gauge tie wire that I use to run a safety wire all the way up to the top of the ice and anchor it to a dead man. So that can be reused as long as it hasn't been kinked or bent too badly. Alright, so we're going to remake this set. Hole's already been cut, so that part of the work's been done. We're going to measure our depth. Hard bottom here, so can't really go in very deep. So we got the water level, which is going to be where the dry spot ends on the pole, and then I'm going to feel with my machete down to the bottom end of the ice. So there's the bottom of the ice, and I'm going to fold that and make a mark there. So that is the bottom of the ice, and I make myself a nice little mark there that I can see pretty easily. And when the beaver are feeding, they're usually going to cruise right below the bottom of the ice. So we want our snares to be like maybe 3-4 inches below the bottom of the ice. Is going to be where our first top tier snares is going to be. So I'm going to take, actually the first thing that you're going to do, so the other 3 snares of the 4, I just pulled them off and looked at them. That looks good. That looks good, untouched. Those were probably on the bottom. The top where the beaver was caught, this is the one opposite of the one I caught the beaver in. This one's kinked up pretty bad. This is 5/64 cable. You're going to have more kinkage than you'll have if you use like 3/32. But I feel that this results, it's less visible, it results in more catches. So that one's kind of dinged up. We're going to throw it on the pole and just see what it looks like. We may have to replace it with another snare. So the first thing we're going to do is run our snares down the pole. I already know that I'm going to have 4 here. Now pay attention when you set these, because when you run your snare down the pole, they're going to want to, the cable is going to want to be oriented a certain way based on how you built that snare. So I'm going to show you an example of that. So the way I built this snare, when the snare is open, see how the loop that's going to hook onto my pole is horizontal while the snare is vertical. So this is the way it wants to sit. So we're going to run the loop in this position. Now if we ran the loop this way, it's going to cause our snare to be twisted, and it still works, but see, the snare's not going to want to lay as vertical. So just always pay attention to that. Different people make snares differently, so you may not have that issue, but just it's something to keep in mind. down. These will be our top two. And before I tighten these down, take my safety wire. I'm going to run that through. Pole, you can use extension cable. I use that sometimes when I get a bunch of them built. They're a lot more supple and easier to manage a lot of times. Now I'm going to go to the bottom of the pole, somewhere near the bottom, and I'm going to wrap this wire around the pole. I'm going to make a twist in it. And then something that I do is maybe a little extra, you may not need to do it, but I put a staple in to keep that wire down, keep that held down to the bottom of the pole. If you're smart, you have an axe or a hammer. I don't have one at the moment. Okay, we get that there, and then I'm going to run this. I want this to stay close, tight to the pole. I don't want it sticking out and interfering with my snare. I'm going to twist it and turn it up the pole. See at the top, twist a little bit to hold it there until we tie it to above the ice. Now it's snare time. Okay, so bottom of the ice, snare there, snare there. Make a couple slashes, indicate to the beaver that another beaver's been chewing on that, and maybe he wants to check it out. A couple slashes on where our bottom tier is going to be. We're going to take our high wire and our top two snares. About here. Just gonna cinch these down to the pole. Tie wire wrapped around, nice and tight. And that's gonna be my anchors for my snares. Run that through my top ferrule. You can use a ferrule. When I build them, I either use a ferrule or I'll use a piece of rubber plastic hosing material, like a vinyl tubing. That works well, and it's cheap. Okay, so we got our top two snares set. We want these to be kind of free from the pole. We don't want the snare wire really touching the pole. It can, but I think that can interfere with the ability of the snare to fire. One of the things that I'm going to do here is I'll make my loops just a little bit smaller. And the reason for that is I've caught 3 big beavers out of this lodge. I'm guessing the remainder are going to be small, so I don't really want to miss a little guy. This is an animal damage situation, so we kind of got to try to catch them all. So the loops, it's not much smaller, but I'll make it just a little bit smaller. My loops are kind of, the way I make them, once you get them set up, they don't adjust very easily. There are other ways to do that. Takes a little extra time. Maybe I'll show that in the future. Okay, so our second tier, we're going to be just below top tier, not quite touching, but not going to leave too much of a gap. So that's about right. Now this is not perfect. If I wanted perfection, I could remake this, but it takes a little extra time, and I'm not too worried about it. I think it's going to function quite well. So that's our setup ready to go. We have our safety wire that runs through all of these snare loops, running to the top of the ice. We've got 4 snares. The bottom going to be about there, so we got a few inches there space, but we're going to catch any beaver that tries to feed on this pole. That's about it. We'll lower it down and attach it to this dead stick on top of the ice, and we'll be good to go.